In the following video, we will explain how to do a purchase return to the supplier. To do a purchase return, the stock needs to be in status R, which is rejected stock, or else the stock will not be able to be moved out of stock and sent back to the supplier. So to create a return, we will click on Select Purchasing in the left list. We will scroll down to Returns and select Return Management. We will select the All Akisa Supervisor Return Entry Transaction. So to generate a new return, we can click on New from the right list. We'll see that the return site and buyer has defaulted. The return site can be changed by removing the return site, clicking on the selection icon, and selecting one of the below sites. Once you have selected your return site, the return date has also defaulted. If we tab, we see that the buyer will default. This will be the user who is generating the return. If we tab, we can now select the supplier who the return is done to. So we'll click on the selection icon and we'll select one of our suppliers. Once we've entered all the header information, we must now select the receipt to which we will then link this return to. So from the left list, in the receipt selection bucket, once we select it, we'll then see the receipts that have been generated previously for the specific site and supplier. So we will now select one of the receipts that we will return. So by ticking the tick box, this will generate the purchase receipt that was previously created and received. Now, as we see the two stock lines that have now defaulted on the line, we'll see that the one is highlighted completely in black, and the second line we'll see the product code is in red. So what this means is the stock that have been moved into the rejected status will be highlighted in black, which will then be able to return. If stock is highlighted in red, that means that the stock is either still in status Q, which is quality control, or status A, which is accepted stock. So as we have previously said, no stock can be returned which is still in status A or Q. So which means for now we cannot move the second line, we cannot generate it in the return. So we'll click on the action button and remove this line. So we will now return the first line. As we tab through the line, we get to the return reason column. If we click on the selection icon, we can specify a specific reason why we are returning the stock. So we can then at a later stage run a report on these specific reasons. So we'll select one of the reasons. We can tab through the line. So if we only return a specific quantity and not the full quantity that was received, we can change that amount. So for instance, 10 was received, but we are only returning 5. As we can see, the status of the product is in status R. It's in the rejected location. Once we have entered the necessary information, we can click on Create. Now we see that a return number has been generated. To review this return number, we can click in the left list on Return Management, and we'll see that the return we have created is now updated in the left list. So to finalize that this return is done, we can click on validation. One thing that we need to note is that when we do the return, we would then need to create a credit note. Because an invoice was already generated, we need to do a credit note for the 5 units to update the financials in the background. So to make sure that we'd be able to create a credit note for the invoice, on the line we've got the generated credit memo field. If this field is set to no, that means that no credit memo will be able to be generated towards the invoice that was created. So we need to make sure that the credit memo is selected as yes, so that a credit memo can be generated to the invoice. So once we are happy with the return, we can click on validate. So the message that pops up tells us that the document will be validated. You will no longer be able to modify or delete it. So if we are happy, we can click on OK. And this tells us that a journal has now been generated for the stock movement. So all that is need to be done is a credit memo needs to be created for the invoice that was generated for the 10 units. So a credit memo will be created for 5 units that will be credited. So to return back to the navigation page, we can click on Close Page.